Dreaming of owning a property in a prime location with great proximity and fantastic neighborhood? EJ Investments Sanyang Seaview Estate is the best choice you have been waiting for. Our Sanyang Seaview Estate is approximately 15 minutes drive away from the busy hub of Brusubi roundabout and into the heart of nature, where you can have a peaceful and relaxed lifestyle with your family. You can buy a finished 4-bedroom story with 5-year flexible payment plan or a service plot with 2-year payment plan option. With over 300 homes, you will enjoy big tar roads with covered drainage, modern electrification with solar street lights, gated entrance with security post, and a breath-catching experience of our beautiful sea view and lake view. You can own a home today at our Sanyang Seaview Estate. Call us today on 446-4838 or 325-9220. Visit our website on ejinvestments.net. EJ Investments, first in property.
Thank you very much, Honorable Silla, for that powerful deliberation. No woman should die giving birth. It's not a new catchphrase for me, and I'm sure not too many of you. But when I heard that come from the head of the Select Committee on Health of the National Assembly, that means we are all held accountable. That's very powerful. And I think he has also demonstrated. I mean, it appeared you underrated the delivery, but for me, we got the message. The message definitely went across. And you hammered home some of the messages that were definitely highlighted by the first speaker. You know, and I expected a representative of the National Assembly. A key element of the health system that is left out each time we discuss the system is the population, the people. We look at the financing, we look at the human resource element, we look at the institutions, but the population, from the literature that I reviewed, is highly evident that usually the planning, just like Dr. Chang indicated, we plan, we don't plan with them, we plan without them, and we want to implement with them. So that's a problem. Because the people, they have several reasons why they should be taken on board. One, they are the patients. Of course, we are a subset of the people I'm talking about. They are the patients. If you are not a patient for health, you are a consumer. The difference is, a patient is the one who needs help now because he or she is sick. The consumer is the one who is anticipating support when he or she gets sick. So in health, you are either a patient or you are a consumer. But you are also a taxpayer, which is why the National Assembly member hammered home the urgent need for us to ensure that we are held accountable. We also want to hear from those in institutions that play a very critical role in the delivery of health services. So he's coming from Tango, meaning Tango is an umbrella body that comprises players from the NGO and other related organizations. So to have the chair to the board of directors from Tango also share his perspective on the state of the Gambian health system, I think is another very good idea. So he will specifically look at the expectation of the civil society from the Gambian health system. Mr. Njai, you are welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I must say I consider it an honor to be invited to this occasion to deliver a paper on the theme, the state of the Gambian health sector, from the lenses of the Gambian civil society. Let me begin by thanking the organizers of this symposium for according us the opportunity to have our voices heard in this all-important discourse. We do not take this lightly, as it shows your appreciation of our contribution to the development of this nation. Mr. Chairman, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, allow me to lay the foundation to my address. We know the Gambia health sector is plagued with numerous difficulties and challenges, yet we believe that as a country, it is not impossible for us to change the system and have what we desire. It is sad to note that with all the expertise in this country, especially so in the health sector, our governments continue to ignore our experts and yet keep promising without delivering. Mr. Moderator, ladies and gentlemen, I will now endeavor to take us on a journey through our health system and try to point out what our expectations are from you, the service providers, in this very vital sector of our nation. The story is told of a woman named Musukeba Ture from Talinding who had suffered numerous miscarriages and finally conceived and ultimately gave birth to a bouncing baby boy. You can imagine her relief when it was announced that it was a boy, for she had almost lost her marriage because of her childlessness. A few days after the birth of her son, as they were preparing for the grand naming ceremony, with a father and husband beaming all over the place, thanking the Almighty for a gift of a son, Musukeba noticed that the baby was experiencing very high temperatures. She took a wet towel, wiped him, as she had seen other women do, with the hope that the temperature will normalize. This effort proved futile, as the baby became restless and cried ceaselessly. She decided to take him to the health center for medical intervention. Unable to call an ambulance because she had no number to call, and even if she did, there was no guarantee that the usual excuse of no fuel or a driver gone owl will not be the response on the other end of the line. Being a mother and desperate for the well-being of her child, she rushed out of the house with the son secured behind her back in search of a taxi en route to the medical center. As usual, her husband Ismaila was nowhere in sight, supposedly at his campekai, playing draft with his friends and arguing about current political happenings. After what looked like an eternity to her, a taxi pulled over, and Musukeba boarded without asking how much, but rather shouting, "Chilopitanbi," meaning the health center closest to her abode. On arrival, the taxi driver was demanding $150 to her shock and distaste, but she had no strength to argue to save her meager dialysis. All that mattered at this point was the survival of her child. By this time, the boy had stopped crying and was struggling to breathe. On reaching the health center, she was told the nurse on duty had gone on lunch break an hour or two earlier, and the doctor on call could only be reached by the nurse who had gone on lunch break. The mother was by this time losing her mind, screaming, panicking, as her baby in her arms was almost lifeless. Other workers were helpless, as it was not within their scope of work to assist. The other nurses on duty were busy with other patients. It was at this point that the nurse on duty came walking, talking on her phone about the Wally Secker show and how she was dressed. Despite the mother and co-workers trying to draw her attention to the emergency at hand, she leisurely took her time to finish her call, and then in a sudden outburst, lambasted everyone for trying to interrupt her important phone call. By the time she took her seat to attend to the emergency, it was too late. The 4-day-old baby was no more. With one look at the baby, she confirmed a mother's worst nightmare. Your baby is dead. It is the will of God. It is not rocket science to imagine how devastated this mother was by now. This story and many stories are an indictment to our health sector. For many things are wrong with our health system, and all hands must come on deck to ensure we right the wrongs of this important system. What we want, then, is a health system that works, period. One that preserves life. From her home, this mother that was celebrating a few days back was faced with every obstacle against the welfare of her boy. What then are the learning points of this story? Could it be that if only we had an efficient ambulance service, a lot more lives could have been saved? Could it be that the story would have been different and that son could have grown up to be one of the best doctors, or maybe a president that would be interested in the lives and livelihoods of his own people and country? How many lives have we lost in this nation just because of the lack of this basic necessity? How many mothers and babies have lost their lives on our poor roads before they could reach a decent health facility? How many patients have died only because they were wrongly handled or transported from an accident scene? So we need an efficient ambulance service in this country. One that would ensure timely transportation and professional handling of patients. Customer service. Staff leaving their workstations to get food, attend social ceremonies, busy themselves on their phones, speaking rudely to patients, being lethargic when on duty, and the impatience demonstrated when dealing with difficult patients. By the way, as I was preparing and typing out this address, I wondered why people that need medical attention are called patients. Well, whatever the reason was, it should always be a reminder for you medical practitioners to just be patient with your patients. Treat them humanly. Someone in need, someone suffering, someone fearing for his life and that of a loved one. That person only needs your help, not your spite, not your arrogance or frustration. Your field of endeavor is one of pure sacrifice. That is your oath, and we demand nothing less. We desire medical practitioners that will empathize with their patients, comfort them, and ease their pain, allay their fears, and give them hope. We expect and desire and demand passionate health workers. Whatever you believe in, you will be passionate about. If you believe in your profession, that there must be a considerable level of passion that is demonstrated in its pursuit, that will make an onlooker fall in love with your profession, or at least stand in utmost admiration for you. A passionate health worker will always do his or her best to research and improve on their knowledge and service. Passion inspires innovation. Passion drives one to endeavor to stay on the cutting edge of their profession. How passionate are you in your profession? What innovations have you undertaken that have been inspired and driven by your passion? Take pride in what you do. Remember, you are impacting lives. You are saving generations. Look around you and see how meaningful you have contributed to the life of that man or woman by your timely medical intervention that today stands tall in society, and think, if it had not been for you, the medical practitioner. Adequacy of resources. We are very much aware that there is a huge gap between the demand and supply of our limited medical resources, be it human infrastructure, material, equipment, medication, etc. We know that these limited resources will hasten, we know of these limited resources and will hasten to call on our government to do all in its power to make sufficient provision for this basic necessity, our health, our lives. We call on our government to invest in this sector, make the health environment conducive for the preservation of precious lives and of those who voted you into power. Why would you be busy enriching yourselves and immediate families to the detriment of the masses? When you and your loved ones are sick, you leave the shores of the nation in search of better medical facilities. You leave your people behind to suffer under the dire prevailing conditions in our medical facilities. We say no to this evil. This must stop. One life lost under these terrible circumstances is one too many. Better working and living conditions for health workers. The greatest motivation is self-motivation. Someone once said that life does not give us what we desire, but what we demand. Yes, we have to make demands from ourselves to get the best out of us. When no one believes in you or supports you, you must be your biggest fan. Cheer yourself, push yourself, look at purpose, and rise from the big blow and from the fiery pit. We are very much aware of the school of thought that believes that motivation is not necessarily gotten by financial gain. But tell me seriously, good people, if one is unable to meet their basic needs, there is surely bound to be a distraction for that person in their line of work. So the authorities must ensure that our health workers are properly remunerated in a bid to eliminate imminent distractions. We know you have been promised a pay increase, but are also aware that prices of both basic commodities keep increasing. We hope our government this year before overspending on overseas travels, they will consider increasing the health budget line in a bid to improve on living conditions of practitioners in this noble sector. For those amongst us that are impossible to handle when we have medical emergencies, please, health workers, forgive the headaches we cause you. At times we forget that you are human beings and have your issues to deal with. So be patient with your patients and potential patients. So we, the patients and potential patients, let us go easy on our health workers. Let us try to empathize and understand that they are working under difficult and at times impossible situations. For the above to happen, the entire nation must come on board and support our health workers, amplify their voices for improved conditions. The criticisms are good, but beyond the criticisms, how many of us have ever tried to ask ourselves, what can we do as individuals and collectively to lend support for the improvement of our health system? We commend those among our ranks in civil society that have over the years supported the health sector in numerous ways. Our government must demonstrate leadership in providing a conducive environment in our health sector and for our health workers to give out their very best. Lip service will not do. If you say there is no money, then cut on your travel expenses and lavish lifestyles and do the right thing. All the money you are busy making will not help you when the cold hands of death catch up with you. With these words, let me conclude by thanking and commending members of the health fraternity for their dedication to service. Your sacrifice amidst the dire circumstances have not gone unnoticed. Thank you, doctors, nurses, public health officials, and all workers in the health sector for being there for us. Thank you for lives you have saved, smiles you have put on faces, hope to live and restore to many. On this day, we pray for your continued well-being and that of your families. May the Almighty God give you your due reward, bless the works of your hands, and cause you to always reap the fruit of your labor. Mr. Moderator, as I close, I have written a special poem dedicated to you, the people in the health sector. And the poem goes, I celebrate you today, you who save and preserve lives. For the sleepless nights and tireless service, countless years of learning just to serve humanity. With passion, you nursed and cared for our helpless form. Caring for patients, tired and underpaid, with a plethora of unpaid bills, a home, a family to care for, yet you still have my interests at heart. I appreciate and cherish you, for without you, I could have been counted amongst the departed. The lives you saved by the attention you gave is all recorded for posterity and for a great world. You are more than you can articulate, more valuable than the wealthy, for in their wealth and affluence, they still require and can't do without your services. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. May God bless our health sector and our health workers. Thank you.
So we will have Mr. Cisse is working for the WHO country office, and he's going to look at the contributions of WHO and the UN system. of course, towards the health system strengthening in the Gambia. He's an economist by background, and he's no stranger to some of us within and outside the health sector in the Gambia. So Mr. Cisse, like I did with others, I don't need special introduction for you. I will just give you the floor to tell us the contribution of the WHO as well as other sister UN agencies towards the health system strengthening in the Gambia.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to you all. Okay, I work at the WHO country office as a health economist, but I'm also in charge of the health system, which Jibril was going to tell you what the health system is made up of by going through the 6 building blocks. But since we have 20 minutes, I will still leave that to Jibril, and he will do that. Okay, first of all, before I go to what WHO and other UN agencies have done in terms of supporting the health system, I would just like to clarify to you that, WHO is a secretariat to serve the government. So we are a servant to the government. But erroneously, WHO is always referred to as a donor. But WHO is not a donor, meaning we don't have funds to come and support the health sector in terms of finance. We are a secretariat and we are there to give technical support. But we are a development partner, meaning we are there to also work with the government as a servant to seek funds from other donors such as the World Bank, the African Development Bank, and other donors to fund the health sector. So basically this is very important for everyone to realize, right? But I don't blame most of the people for taking WHO, considering WHO as a donor. Why is that? Because I think the first thing I would like to emphasize here is that we have to understand that in the Gambia, there are only few donors that operate in the Gambia. So because of this lack of number of donors, this paucity of donors, any development partners that provide funds into the sector, people will term you as a bank or a money bank where they can come and get funds. So this is where it comes from. Okay, following that, the way WHO functions, as I said, we are a servant to the ministry. If you remember Dr. Kabir Cham's presentation, the last slide talked about the World Health Assembly. And the World Health Assembly is a body that meets every year in May in Geneva, and it is made up of ministers of health around the world, including the Minister of Health of Gambia. So this is the highest decision-making body in WHO. Whatever they decide at the World Health Assembly, this is what the Secretariat will do. Even our budget, how we come to intervene in the country. And what usually happens is that the World Health Assembly will approve WHO's strategic program for 5 years, what we call the General Program of Work. Again, this is defined by ministers of health all over the world. And when we call it in short GPW. When this GPW is approved, then they will also debate the program budget, meaning the amount of funds that WHO should use to support countries. So from that, we will develop what we call a biennial program of work, which is a 2-year plan in terms of how we are going to support the country. Now, again, referring to Dr. Kabir Cham's wonderful presentation, what we do in the health system is not governed by what the World Health Assembly says. Why? Why is that? Of course, we contextualize it because every country is unique. Every country faces different challenges in terms of its how to manage its health system. So again, we have to come down to the level of the Ministry of Health, the minister and the different programs to discuss what exactly do we want to do in the health system. If the ministry says that we think it's an issue that health workers do not have accommodation, then if the ministry says we can spend 50% of the budget building staff quarters all over the country, then that is what WHO will do, right? So you have to understand that whatever we do in the health system, it is governed by what the Ministry of Health actually wants. But at the same time, we are also a technical body. So if the Ministry of Health says, for instance, just going by John Charles' speech before I came in, if the Minister of Health said, we want to spend half of your budget in terms of overseas travel, then WHO as a technical arm, we can say, no, we don't think this is relevant, or we don't think that this is a priority. So basically with that background, I hope that you understand what is it we do. Now, in terms of the health system, going through the different components, I will start with service delivery. What we have done in the recent past, between, say, 2016 to 2018, is to support the Ministry of Health raise funds from other partners to intervene in the health sector in terms of expanded program on immunization. You remember Bolon's statement that the indicators for immunizations, they are going down. So WHO, together with our sister agencies such as UNICEF, we supported the ministry develop a 5-year proposal to fund immunization in terms of health system strengthening. And this one was approved by Gavi. So based on that, $5 million is available for spending between 2017 to 2021 in terms of ensuring that the immunization coverage is still maintained at a higher level. So this is why you find out that right now the ministry is trying to build some facilities in areas where it is, the urban population is too congested. This is all in line with ensuring that we deliver services to the community. And again, we did this with our sister agency, UNICEF. In fact, UNICEF are actually the agency that is managing these funds on behalf of the ministry. All right? I will just want to give you one example under each building blocks. In terms of health information system, again, WHO, using our technical capacity, we supported the Ministry of Health to again do proposals which were submitted to Global Fund, what we now call the concept notes, and under the 3 diseases that Global Fund work with. You know about it. I don't have to say. And in it, there was a component dealing with health systems, and that health system had a focus on what? Health information system and human resources for health. So based on that, the ministry again was able to mobilize over $3.5 million to spend on key health system issues dealing with health workforce as well as human resources for health. Regarding the issue of health financing, which again, Dr. Cham mentioned about achieving universal health coverage. In fact, now WHO, we don't even try to talk about the health systems in terms of the 6 building blocks. We just talk about people-centered care and achieving universal health coverage. Because if you compactualize it, you will find out that we will be working in silos. And we understand that the system is quite complex. What really matters is that when someone is ill and they need health care, is the system able to deliver that health care without that person having financial loss? Basically, if we are able to do that for the majority of the population, then we are on this road to achieving universal health coverage. So this is the way forward that WHO is working with the ministry. And what we have been able to achieve in this regard is to support the ministry develop a health financing policy. And in the health financing policy, it outlines all the different components that the ministry needs to implement to ensure that there is universal health coverage and that there is adequate financing within the health sector. And we have taken this one step further by collaborating with the ministry and other partners, such as one of the main partners in the government, which is the World Bank. And we are right now developing a health financing strategy to implement that health financing policy. At the same time, WHO has thought it wise to ensure that most of the planning officers dealing with the budget, dealing with funds, they are adequately trained in terms of universal health coverage and health financing. And we have been doing that with our counterparts such as Mr. Jeffrey Jadu and some of the staff under him. Okay. Okay, regarding the health workforce, the all-important health workforce. Again, WHO, over the years, we have been supporting the ministry, first of all, to develop a human resources for health strategic plan from 2015 to 2019. And this is what the ministry has been implementing. And we have also supported them to train a number of health workers in a number of different components of the health system. What we are talking about today as a best practice in terms of the surveillance, it was largely thanks to the support that WHO is giving in terms of training the health workers, the public health officers, to ensure that they are able to do this surveillance. And you can go, even some of the doctors we have been helping give them specialized training. Now, in the area of health technology, WHO has not done much in this regard because, again, we have to focus on where our expertise lies. And if you know that some of the other partners have more expertise in this component of the health system, then we leave it with them. All we do is we collaborate. So basically, I have given you an example in each of the areas of the health system building blocks. Now, you may say that since we are saying what we are doing, that by right we should be seeing good performance in the health sector. But unfortunately, that is not the case, as you know. All of the speakers that have stood on this podium today, from the morning right to the afternoon, have lamented on the challenges that we are facing. Now, for WHO, we have done our own diagnostics, and we have come to the conclusion, again based on evidence, that this poor performance in the health sector, it is not because the health workers are not doing well. No, the health workers are really doing well. We have to commend them, because based on the situation that they find themselves in, you will find that some of them are performing, above expectation in terms of what they are working with. So what is the problem really? Well, our diagnostics has shown that the issue why the health system is not performing so well is because of the poor performance in leadership and governance. And leadership and governance is one of the key components of the health system. And if you cannot do well in that aspect, then forget about the rest. Even if you have commitment, even if you have funding, then you will not be able to do well. So in this regard, WHO has identified and discussed with the ministry and has explained that the way to move in terms of leadership and governance is to enhance the coordination of the support that is taking place within the ministry or the health sector as a whole. I keep saying the ministry because the data also shows that 90% of facilities are in the public health sector. So for me, I am of the view that it is not about what is being done at the private sector. If the ministry gets it right in the public sector, then most of our problems will be solved. So what we have done is to support the ministry developed the country compact. This is what the Honorable Silla mentioned, that this is the point they have given to the ministry to report back on. Because the compact is a document, again, based on guidelines, global guidelines in terms of how to manage this sector. And in it, it has explained every single issue regarding management and coordination of the health sector. How do you work with partners? How do you respond to poor performance? How do you monitor the funding? How do you track what has been done at the beginning of the year? How do you evaluate it by the end of the year? So basically this document is ready, but for 2 years it has been lying there without no implementation. So now one of the arms of government is saying the ministry needs to implement this. For WHO, we are also ready to support this. So basically, if we implement this compact, which is already, it was actually developed by the late Dr. Hatib Jai. WHO gave him a consultancy, and he developed this document. He has died now, how many years? Since he died? Nearly 2 years, and the document has not been implemented. I tell you, if we implement this document, then we will be able to say that in terms of leadership and governance, most of the problems and challenges that has been outlined here today, we will at least, if not eliminate them, but they will be minimized. Now I come to the final point. I have said that it is important that we deal with evidence before we intervene in the health sector. So over the past year, what WHO has been doing is to coordinate comprehensive health system assessment. Now this covers all of these 6 building blocks of the health system. And it is not WHO alone, but most of the main development partners in the health sector are involved in this. For instance, the Global Fund is funding the assessment that deals with health technologies, which deals with the labs and the supplies. And UNICEF is funding the part that, that assesses service delivery. UNFPA came in and are funding health information system. And WHO, we are also funding the health workforce component. And USAID came in and funded health financing, as well as health leadership and governance. So now what we are thinking is that once all of these reports are complete, then we will have the evidence to understand fully what are the bottlenecks and the challenges which are in the health sector. Again, it will not stop there. We will all have to gather using coordination, using guidelines to see what is it that we will implement in the middle term in order to have to ensure that the health system is strong, based on, again, those qualities that Dr. Cham has highlighted in the morning. So basically, this is where we are. Some of those reports are ready, but again, all of the reports need to be ready, or at least 5 of them, and then we will all sit together in order to draw out an implementation plan. So basically, this is what I wanted to share with you. But I want to tell you that working with the health sector is quite difficult for WHO. You see, I'll just give you an example. Okay, I'm here today to present on behalf of the WHO representative, but I also had 2 other meetings to attend on behalf of WHO, which the ministry is doing. For instance, one of the things that WHO supported in the area of health system that deals with governance and leadership is what we call annual health sector reviews. The annual health sector review is another concept that WHO and other donors are selling to countries, where at the end of the year, all of the partners sit together and review what has been achieved. This has never been done in the Gambia, except last year. So that was for 2017. But because it was the first time it was done quite hastily. So we are trying now to do the annual health review for 2018. But this time we are trying to do it again using WHO guidelines to ensure that we do it well, that the recommendations are implemented. So today we had a meeting to go and review these, the documents and the submissions. because the annual health sector review is scheduled for 28th to the 30th of January, which will be next week. So, and I called them and I told them I have something to deliver, but I will be joining you guys. As you see, they have kept me here until 3 p.m. But I cannot say anything. Why? Because WHO, we are the servants of the people. So you see, they can bring up the Honorable National Assembly member to present, they can bring the private sector to present, but for WHO, we always have to be behind the people, because we are just a secretariat. So it is quite difficult to work, but if we all continue doing what we do best, then perhaps we will be able to see this strong health system that we are all yearning for. Thank you very much. This is what I wanted to share with you.
Mr. Janyu Jibril is the Director of Planning and Information at the Ministry of Health. Already, almost all the speakers have made reference to your own perspective on this topic. Because I think, as the Director of Planning, health system is a very key element in your functions and responsibilities. So it is broadly the state of the Gambian health system we are looking at. But specifically, Mr. Jaju will tell us how effective is the Gambian health system, what is working, and what needs to change.
So the task assigned to me is to look at how effective the Gambian health system is, what is working, and what needs to change. I think some of our colleagues have already mentioned, I would have loved to go straight away to what needs to change in terms of the structural adjustment, but I'll get to that level. The Minister of Health and Social Welfare leadership resides on the Minister of Health and Social Welfare. However, you will see most of my presentation omitting social welfare. As it is now, social welfare is not part of our budget structure. Social welfare is supposed to be a ministry of its own. It's going to be called Ministry of Women, Children, and Social Welfare. But as it is now, it is, according to the budget codes, it's Ministry of Health, as it is. All right. So, well, I don't know how. All right. So, when you look at the Ministry of Health and Social Welfare structure, national government health sector leadership resides in the Ministry of Health and Social Welfare. This ministry is comprised of 9 directorates. And these 9 directorates, compared to the 2001 Health for Good policy, when we have only basically 2 directorates, and the third one would have been the Social Welfare Directorate. But now, after the development of the 2012-2020 health policy, we have seen the emerge of new directorates which are not inconsistent with our health sector policy. In the previous health sector policy, we have the Director of Planning, then we have the Director of Health Services, then we have the Director of Health Promotion. So the Directorate of Public Health Services, the Directorate of Pharmaceutical Services, and then the Laboratory Services used to be under the Director of Health Services. Then we have the Chief Pharmacist, Chief Laboratory Scientist, Chief Public Health Officer, and Chief Nursing Officer. That's what used to be the organogram. So, and then the question comes, what needs to change? And I think before I get to that level, what first needs to change is this organogram needs to change in order for us to be able to deliver to the Gambian people efficiently. So if you look at the health sector policy, which is the guiding principle of the health sector, the policy is saying that our mission is to promote and protect the health of the population through the equitable provision of quality health care. And the vision is provision of quality and affordable health services for all by 2020. And 2020 is just 12 months from now. how well we realize this vision is, anyway, is yet to be decided. And the goal is to reduce morbidity and mortality to contribute significantly to the quality of life in the population. So now the question is, how well is the Ministry of Health, then social, for 2018 on the review, social welfare, being able to function according to its policy? When you look at the structure of the Gambia health system, we will discuss two: the structure of the system and the structure of the governance of the healthcare system. The governance is what I have just mentioned. That's the organogram of the ministry. And this is the structure in terms of healthcare service delivery. And these are the three-tier system that we have. We have at the lower end, which is at the primary level, we have the village healthcare workers, and then the traditional birth attendant, which now name change, which is not in line with their public health experts, and now they are called the community birth companions. And they are supervised by the village healthcare, community health nurse. That is at the primary level. Moving on to the secondary level, we have the major and the minor health centers. And these minor health centers provide, according to the policy, provide basic, both BMOC and CMOC services, meaning basic emergency obstetric care and comprehensive emergency obstetric care. So those that's supposed to provide a little bit of comprehensive emergency obstetric care is the major health center. And then the minor health center is to provide the BMOC. That's the basic emergency obstetric care. And further, at the top of the pyramid, we have the hospitals, and then we also have the district and the teaching hospitals. However, the debate is on, and it will still be on, whether do we continue calling them district hospitals or we go back to the old name of calling them minor health centers. Major health center, or should we maintain the same name as district hospital? To me, personally, at a personal perspective, I think the communities in which these district hospitals reside need better care. And if we can provide them the care that they need by giving them all the resources that that this particular hospital needs in order to function as a district hospital, I think it's better we maintain the name and provide them the service, the required funding for them to operate as a district hospital. So looking at I'm not trying to make the comparison, looking at the three-pyramid structure that we have, and then looking at the organogram of the ministry, you will realize that we have about 9 directorates. And out of these 9 directorates, there is one directorate that deals directly with the regional, in terms of function. I mean, the regional health director reports directly to the director of health services. So now, implementation at the community level. How does the director of planning implement his activities at the regional level? How does the other directors also implement activities at the regional levels? And how does the regions also report at the central level? It's an issue that we need to look at as a health system. This is why I say what should first change is this. Dr. Chan mentioned that the issue of the Health Service Commission. When you look at it, health service reform starts with health financing. There has to be separation of functions. You cannot be a referee and a player at the same time. You cannot be a purchaser and a regulator at the same time. So you cannot be a verifier and a contractor at the same time. So this is why we have to go back to the drawing board to separate all these functions clearly. so that we can have a better delivering health service system. Some of you must have seen this organogram. This is the organogram we have in our policy. So when I presented the other one, I'm sure a lot of people will be asking, no, this is not what I have seen in the policy. This is what we have. Sorry. This is what we have in the policy. But this is what we have now, in reality, on the ground. This is what we have. But this is what we have in the policy. When we used to have the director of planning, we have the director of pharmacy, laboratory services. Then we have the director of health services. Then we have the Directorate of Food Standard and Authority. It is our mandate, and it is as per the health policy and the strategy plan. When we look at the system, how effective is the Gambia health system? And what is a health system? A health system is an arrangement of parts, and a system is an arrangement of parts and their interconnection that come together for a purpose, as per the definition. So what is a health system? A health system consists of all organizations, people, and action whose primary intent is to promote, restore, or maintain health. And like any other system, it is set for interconnected parts that have to function together to be effective. So when we look at the health system, it has been mentioned that we always look at it as the 6 building blocks. But my diagnosis goes beyond the 6 building blocks. I'm looking at the health system, the 7 building blocks are the people who uses the healthcare services. Those are the community. So this is the 7th building block of health. The patients, the families, the communities, the ministry itself has an entity. Then we have the health providers, health financing bodies. These are, although you can still have the 6 building block inbuilt in, but we are classifying them as a separate building block, as the 7th building block. You have a lot of interest in healthcare service delivery. Either we know it or not. Politicians have interest. Civil society have interest. Ministries have interest. We, healthcare workers, have interest in it. And then the people that we serve also have interest in it. So at some point, I always ask myself, are we driving, ourselves, or are we driven by people? Because you have, every day you encounter people coming to you in terms of healthcare issues, and they want it fixed. Politicians want their communities to have health centers. Yesterday we received one, said we want to build a health facility within our community. And I said, which community did you live in? And what is the proxy to the next facility? Said it is around 3.5. I said, as per our policy, should be 5. So if you are 3.5 away from a facility, do you think you can maintain and sustain the facility after building it? The ministry is struggling now. Currently, one thing is, how do we absorb the community clinics? And the pressure comes in and out. Community will build community clinics because they have donor support. They buy a private ambulance. The ambulance runs 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. The 4th day, they say, ministry, can you provide fuel for this ambulance? And this particular request is not budgeted for in that particular year. So how do you expect us to be effective in our service delivery if we are fighting, if we are on problem solving, crisis solving day in, day out? How do you expect us to be effective? And these issues is not a self-imposed issue. It's imposed by people outside the Ministry of Health who have their special interest. You know, probably politicians because they want to be elected, and then they have not consulted the Ministry of Health before they make election promises, Because you want to be elected, you say, we are going to build you a clinic here. So how do we meet those expectations? So looking at the 6 building blocks, one thing I will say, Ministry of Health, so and then the list goes on and on and on. If you look at the batch attended by skilled health staff, it's 57.2, and then the sub-Saharan Africa average is 54. So I've decided to bring this so that we can reflect on whether the health system is definitely performing or not. However, we are performing, but we are still faced with serious challenges, and which need to be addressed. And if you look at all the other indicators, generally we have definitely performed compared to the sub-Saharan Africa. However, maternal mortality is a key indicator. It's also a developmental indicator. It's also equally a developmental indicator. When you look at the maternal mortality in relation, according to the MDGs, countries should reduce maternal mortality by 75%. So this 75% and 1990 was the base year. And 2013 was our first, DHS. And if you look at it, we are just short by around 17%, reaching the global target of 75%. When you look at it mathematically, you will realize that the Gambia have almost 58.something%. The Gambia have moved fast. Compared to other countries, we are around 58.something% in relation to the achievement of the MDG target for maternal mortality. So when you look at still now on the effectiveness of the health system, you will realize that infant mortality, child mortality, and under 5 mortality is still a challenge. However, we have steadily reduced. This is a selection of certain African countries: Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, Guinea-Conakry, Mali, Senegal, and Sierra Leone. These are our surroundings in terms of the under 5 mortality. So where are we as a country? Light blue. This is from 1950. 1955 to 2015. So it's almost around 50 or 60 years trend analysis that is done. So we realize that we have not been performing badly compared to the regional, but however, Senegal outperformed us in terms of reducing under 5 mortality. In terms of reducing under 5 mortality. So, what needs to change? If we really want to reform the health system, it has to start with the financing bit. How do we reform the health system? He has mentioned. There has to be separation of powers. That has to happen. If you do not separate powers, your health system will not work. Because the person planning should not be the person implementing. And the person implementing should not be the person regulating. But all these things has to be separate. So therefore, health financing, to me, is the key point that we need to hammer. And it has been defined as the raising or collection of revenue to pay for the operations of the health system. Cost to service provision. So whatever we are saying here, no matter how beautiful services you have, the package you put on paper, if there's no money, you cannot deliver. So, and health financing has 3 functions. And the number 1 function is the revenue collection. How do we make sure that the system has enough money to be able to finance and implement its activities well? And how do we make sure that we pool all the funds together to be able to pay for the less? Which means now, when we reform the health system, the richer should pay for the poor. In other words, we may have what we call social justice. However, he has mentioned there is difference between equity and equality. But in health financing, when we reform the health financing landscape, we realize that the rich will have to pay for the poor because there will be tax levied on services that the poor will not access those services are only meant for the rich, and the rich will have to pay more. And then we also have what we call purchasing. Here in health financing, when we say purchasing, we don't mean going and buying things in the market. No. In fact, now the term has changed to be strategic purchasing. What are we purchasing with the money that the Gambia is allocating to the Ministry of Health? Is it strategic? Is the financing strategic? The only strategic purchasing we have now is the resource-based financing, which is a form of strategic purchasing. Our allocation to health facilities is not based on any formula. And by right, we have different ways of purchasing. We have capitation. We have what we call fee for service. For example, people will come and then access healthcare services, and later they bill the ministry, and then the ministry will pay. So capitation is when you are allocating funds to Edward Francis Moore, you have to look at the population target of Edward Francis Moore. How much population is Edward Francis Moore covering? So based on that population, you allocate resources. But currently in the Gambia, what we are now doing in terms of purchasing is passive purchasing. So we are saying that this form should change. And how does it need to change is, this is the way our health system model should look like. We have the stewardship and governance on the left-hand side. Then we have the collection, the pooling, then the purchasing of services. And then you move on to the provision of healthcare service delivery. This is a model I took from the WHO. It is telling you that in order for the country to achieve UHC, these are the critical steps you need to take. And this is the model that the Gambia need to copy. So in other words, in summary, what the Gambia should do in order to move towards UHC is 3 critical things. And 2 of them, one of them is already done, and the second one is on the verge of completion. Probably next month it will be done, which is the strategy plan. And the last but not the least is government to show a political commitment by enacting a legislation that will establish and make social health insurance mandatory. That's the way. That's the only way that we can move forward as a country. And that's the way we can also make resources more readily available for our health intervention in order for us to move forward. So on that note, I want to thank you very much for your patience. Although time was not on our side, I wish I can give you more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jagu. I think that was quite comprehensive. Our last, but of course not the least, speaker for the event is Mr. Amadou Barrow. Amadou. Amadou is coming from academia. He's a lecturer at the School of Public Health, the University of the Gambia. And he's a very promising young Bodofel. If there are young Bodofels that should be celebrated, I think, in my opinion, he's one of them. And the applause you are hearing from behind perhaps goes a long way to justify my assertion. He has a background in public and environmental health from the HND program. Then I think he did a BSc at the university. And I understand Amadou has a background in computer science as well. Is it? BSc in computer science? Yeah, so he's also into computer science. He just returned from Nigeria less than a year for his master's program. So he was a key member of the GAFO executive committee at some point, and he provided a lot of support. He is speaking on behalf of Professor Rex Kwe, who is unavoidably absent. And Rex, because of the trust and confidence he has in him, feels that definitely Amadou can fit in his shoes. So, Mr. Barrow, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. To start with, a lot of other presenters talk about maternal deaths, right? As we are talking right now, statistics shows that for every day, we are losing 830 women, right? We can dissect it a little more further. For every hour, we are losing nothing less than 35 women. Further down to dissect, for every minute, 2 women die as a result. That's just for the maternal aspect. Let's take a quick look at the mental health. According to the recent WHO report, for every Gambian from age 15 and above, there is at least one with mentally ill problem, right? The statistics went further to show that Gambia is ranked 13 on the list out of the 46 countries in the world for developing nations in terms of suicide exposure or suicide prevalence. Further down into the statistics, our epilepsy level as far as WHO is concerned, for 5 in every 1,000 Gambian. But then let's take a look at the first, where the data says for 10% of the Gambian population, age 15 and above, are having at least a form of mental illness. Meaning, for every 10 normal Gambians from age 15 and above, regardless of sex, one liberally or naturally has to develop mentally ill. Now, let's take a look at the services we have for them. Statistics again shows that from the same WHO at the level of Tangatanga, that we have 4.6 to nearest greater whole number, 5 for every 100,000 population of the Gambia. So then if you want to know the beds that are available, that is 4.5, we can round it up and then we assume how many based on this data can we predict is going to be the total bed space at the Tangatanga that we are having. But we don't want to go into those other nitty-gritties. But this is just things that I think they are important. Sometimes I used to call them hidden epidemics. These are things that they are happening, and these are things that we should always reflect, because somebody said somewhere, when people or a maternal mother conceived, at the point of delivery, we assume should be a moment of joy, right? But at some point it becomes a moment of sorrow. As we are talking again, the current maternal mortality for the Gambia is 433. I'm happy that Mr. Baji projected. But then if you look at it at an aggregate level for sub-Saharan, we might think we are improving. We are not, all right? Now, just a quick sort of synopsis. If you look at the Nigerian system, if you look at the national aggregate, we are performing, right? But there are some states that they don't even have up to 100 deaths per 100,000, like let's say Edo State, right? Edo State, and then other states within. But other states like the North, the Sokoto, and the N, they are recording nothing less than 1,500. In the whole West Africa, Sierra Leone is the leading. When women conceive, it's a moment for them to start crying because these are deaths that are happening. Statistics shows that 99% happens in the developing countries, and then among the deaths that we've registered, more than 80% are preventable. However, skill births become recognized. Statistics also shows that 78% of these deaths can be prevented through skill births. I just want to set the base to be able to appreciate the role of the training institutions, right? Now, coming back to the University of the Gambia, I will be a bit biased because that's where I have much more data to deal with. We started our first ever bachelor's program in year 2000. They've completed in 2004, and we have a total of 2 graduates for the first ever program, right? Then 2005, we have 6 graduates. 2006, we have about 10. Totally, as of 2014, we have 121 graduates. This is exclusive of those that we draw along the line or transfer or so. However, as I'm speaking to the people at this point in time, for the bachelor's program, we graduated nothing less than 184. 3, 4, 5, a week later from today, we are convocating nothing less than 24 students for the bachelor's and about 5 for the master's, 2 for the MPH, and then 3 for the MSPH. This is just to show you or to tell you as to how much we are also doing our quota in trying to improve on the health indicators as a country. But now when we move down to the health system, I want to use this analogy once again. Let's take a look at a computer as a system. We know the famous hardwares and the softwares, right? Health systems, Shakespeare would say, we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single gamut of destiny. But whatever happens to one single segment in a given situation within a system, it affects the other part. This is the analogy I think healthcare system works. We are an important component of the entire system. If it is for a computer system, like I said, we know the drivers, right? The role of the drivers in computer science. We have transistors that we have in the main, what we call arithmetic and logic unit. But then the role of the university is like the drivers that works and connects the different hardwares in a computer system. Because we know for every peripheral device to be functional, they have to have a representations at the level of the transistors. And transistors is where the processor is. Commonly, we call it the brain of the computer. And this is where the role of the university or a training institutions becomes very important. But somebody could say, like in our old saying, they says, tell me who your friends are, then I will tell you the kind of person you are. We can come with a different version of it to say, let me know the types of human resource base you have in a given healthcare system. Then I will question and predict the inefficiency and the ineffectiveness of that system. This is what makes training institutions very special. Now, moving down to some of the building blocks, we've recognized that human resource is one of them. And then Jibril definitely did justice to that. And then he spent more time to be able to make us understand when it comes to the human resource part. Now, if you go down to be able to see the role of the university or the role of, let's say, training institutions generally, one, we recognize that a university is a repository and, of course, a generator of knowledge. And this is in line with what we call the research engine theory, wherein university happens to develop people to be creators, to be testers, and of course, to be able to redefine the status quo. Because in public health, one of the shortest definitions, my favorite definition in public health, according to the Institute of Medicine, right? They said, it is the successful redefining of the unacceptables. As simple as that. I don't want to go with the traditional one, the arts and science of preventing diseases and all, right? Let me repeat. The successful redefining of the unacceptables. This is what makes public health special. We can spend a whole term paper in an academic situation just to contextualize this in our own context, to make it more consumable. But in my own opinion, I spent a whole lot of time to look at them, or to look at this clause in a very elaborate way. But I came to conclude that public health becomes special when there are problems, wherein we need malaria control programs, wherein we need the EPI, wherein we need the ECD. There are problems we want to redefine. And most of these problems, the longer they stay, the more havoc they create. We have mosquitoes out there that can make our women, children, the vulnerable population, to develop some conditions along the line. The same way we have some other companies, even as simple as risky human behaviors. The role of health promotion, education becomes another significant part. But if you look at it from a bigger picture, in one way or the other, our goal becomes to redefine successively some of those things that are unacceptable. They are unacceptable because they constitute a risk. They are unacceptable because they predisposes you to certain group of conditions. And at the end of the day, in one way or the other, positively or negatively, directly or indirectly, you become a predisposing factor. At the end of the day, you pay the price for it. And that is where public health becomes very, very important, and it becomes very special. At the level of the department, or at the level of the training institutions, one of the things that I want to emphasize more is research, because at some point we need to recognize the role of the institutions at some point, because research is one of those things that is lacking in order to make our institution very much functional, because we need to close the gap between the industry and the academic community. To close the gap between the industry and the academic community, that's what's brought about research. And this is not just about research. We're talking about policy-driven researches that are of policy significance. Of course, research is of academic significance, I agree with you. But then we need researches that we need to localize them. We need to contextualize them. Because there are models that we are kind of adopting, but then we lack to set the base in order to contextualize them, in order to be responsive to the dynamic public health problems that we are having. If the training institutions cannot fill in that gap, then I will call it or describe it as a commodity of non-commercial value. All right? So in my own opinion, this is where we think partnership is important. It's not just about research, but it's about research of policy significance. And in order to embark on that, we need to make sure we recognize the role, we build the capacities. Somebody said, we don't need to build the capacities. Probably we need to promote it, or maybe we need to enhance it, right? It becomes semantic. But then we need to support what we have. We need to recognize the role of the training institutions. A couple of days ago, the faculty took it on themselves, the college, to move down to CRR, purposely for research, both on systems and of course on nutrition, and as well as WASH. Interestingly for nutrition, we explore on a lot of themes within, including the prenatal component, coming down to the antenatal, the postnatal, and the list goes on and on. And then we make sure that it is in conformity with the rigorous scientific standards in order to be able to publish it, inform policies, and then we will open up a room wherein we will call it dissemination of information to be able to prove ourselves as an institution, and also to kind of serve as a sort of a clapback for people to recognize the role, and then we can be able to see how best we can adjust and then see how we can seamlessly work together as an institution. Because this is where we think the role of academic becomes very important. And then when we work together, we shall be able to improve the lives of the sovereign citizen of the Gambia. Generally, I don't have much to say. Unless if there are some questions coming from the floor, I would not hesitate to attempt. But this is exactly what it is. And some of the current efforts we are doing as a department, some new courses were added, research becomes a prerequisite for graduations, the graduate program as well embark on research projects. So these and many more are some of the novel approaches that we are working as a system in order to improve the lives of a common Gambian citizen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sometimes you wonder why it is still problematic and chaos in the system. For me, the expertise is out there. You know, when I was in Krikamaba dispensary, you can count a few people with master's program in those days. But in terms of training, public health is one component that has benefited immensely the past few years. But again, when you look at output or delivery, definitely the elderly can raise their hands and say things were better in our days than now. So what is our problem? What is our problem? And the beauty is, you go to the Kerr now, you find many people who, if you ask them what are you, they will struggle to tell you because they've got training in different areas. Then something is fundamentally wrong, which is why someone asked one of our online followers to say, how do we make it work? If governance and leadership are recognized as one of the key problems, how do we make it work?